Government of West Bengal Department of IT and Electronics, a state PSU called WEBEL. We are basically, as you know, all the state nodal agency as did. We also do some kind of, what do you say, that industry promotion, electronics industry promotion, IT security policy making. We are mostly into the policy making and governance part of the entire ecosystem of the IT/ITES industry in the state. But over the last, from 2018, for last 6 years, our government has decided to set up a COE on cyber security, which has changed our entire state cyber security ecosystem a lot. So, as you know, most of the states have their own state data centers, their SOCs, their COEs in cyber security. But over the passage of time, we have seen that to make the entire ecosystem safe, we have to do a continuous kind of research with the security, and outcome is that securing exposure management. In exposure management, most of you know that with respect to information security, we all are concentrated on the application security part of it by doing a VAPT kind of thing that we normally, our state PSU, WEBEL is also 13 empaneled. They are also doing lot more vulnerability assessment and this kind of stuff. But if you really look into this, over the passage of time we have seen, we have analyzed the vulnerability assessment reports of many websites of our state government departments, some private bodies and all, and we have found out that there is no end to vulnerabilities, because vulnerabilities are increasing day by day. So with respect to the risk appetite, if you consider the risk appetite with respect to the risk appetite are day by day increasing, and the vulnerabilities is also our vulnerabilities increasing day by day. If you see, the number of CVEs are increasing, number of CWEs are increasing. Whenever you conduct VAPT of a website, there is a certain, recently issued a guideline that in each and every year, you have to do a security assessment of your website if it is in the state data center to make it and to declare it as a safe. Then you understand, with respect to the earning of a auditing organization, it may not sound very interesting, but with respect to the exposure management or as regards to the cyber security incident management for the state, you need to look into something more beyond that. Other than managing the vulnerabilities or other than managing with some hardware ecosystem part of it, you need to manage something more beyond that. What we do normally, if any connection packets come to the hardware security periphery or into the software security periphery, it analyzes, it scans, and it gives vulnerability exposures. But what we try to introduce over the last 2 years, we are continuously doing it, that CTEM, continuous threat exposure management. And that is more beyond that. That is not when it is coming into your network. It is sometimes before that, when when your SIM and SOAR, which are working within your SOC, when a connection packet comes to us, in the outside we have installed a threat exposure management system, which is giving intel to the internal SIM that the packet which is coming in, it might be some poisonous kind of packet, and you scan it accordingly. It sometimes increases, not necessarily the vulnerability management part of it, also the turnaround time of the packet processing. So what I like to present here, that it is not that we are showing that any kind of, you can say from the government we are promoting something, but it is the best practice that we are following in our state, that I want to inform the esteemed guest here, that the best practice what we are following, that I like to present. You might see that common vulnerability exposure, vulnerability overtly stressed upon, exposure silently kills. All vulnerabilities are not exposure, all exposures are not vulnerabilities. But with respect to, if you say, day before yesterday, I am seeing I'm just watching a movie where there is a very famous dialogue in a very, you may say it's a Bengali movie, but there is a very famous dialogue by a police officer that if out of 10 false positive information, I get 1 positive, then it serves my purpose. So, if all exposure are not vulnerabilities, you might ask that exposure management karke humko kya milega? What I will get from the exposure management? But exposure management will give you 2 things. One is, it will give you some intels to your SIEM and SOAR, and which will reduce the analytical analysis time of your SIEM and SOAR, and at the same time give you a continuous threat exposure management that will reduce your risk appetite. These 2 practices we are increasing day by day, because whenever we have nearly 3,500 virtual machines working in our state data center, which is coming to our WB-SWAN, West Bengal State Wide Area Network, our MPLS connectivity, our SD-WAN, everywhere they are hitting. But whenever they are hitting, there is a SIEM and SOAR they are monitoring, there is a threat intelligence system, they are all OEM makes, they are all monitoring them. But you will be surprised to know that recently we came across news published in a Stanford magazine that AT&T using for the last 12 years this CTM, that's a open source product, that's an extension of your cloud. AT&T using a open source product just to monitor the threat exposure, and they are getting a huge kind of security results out of it. So if everybody of us using this kind of state exposure management product, threat exposure management product, so you might also get some kind of exposure. Endpoint security is end of era. Endpoint security, if you go to the, now we are restricting it to the only 5,000 endpoints that is under our threat exposure management. In peripheral security, there is firewall, there is sandbox, honeypot, there is SIEM, SOAR, there is EDR, MDR, XDR. Exposure management system is beyond that. Exposure management system is a continuous threat exposure management system, is basically managing connection coming to this peripheral security, what we are trying to establish. So peripheral security downside, it's a lack of IPsec tunnel, it's a prohibitory cost, it's a lack of qualified manpower, is an exponential rise in connected device, inability of standalone end-sec tools, protect, prevent and preempt. And you all know that in today's development environment, you will be surprised to know that in today's development environment, there is a rise increase of MADP environment, which is connected many systems to a single system, many different system coming to many different VMs or many different network, which is coming to a single place and delivering service to the customers. We are in government, what do we do? You are all technologists, you are working with the core technology, we are the consumer of the technology in the government. But what we have understood in our own practices, that whenever you are accepting something, let us be very firm, let us be very cautious about what we are accepting from service from the consumer. That should not create any threat, not to the state necessarily, but to the country itself. Because in our consideration, there are many CII, critical information infrastructure, that we are handling, starting from power, banking, state data center, police network, everything we are managing from a single building. So whatever you are accepting as a connection, please do not treat it as a simple application. Whenever the application coming with a vulnerability on his road, it is, you may call it VAPT on the fly. Whenever a connection coming to your path, वो road जो है, normally अभी what we have tried, what we have seen in most of the metro cities, whenever a car crossing to the road going to a particular destination, the CCTV camera is monitoring the car throughout its distance. It's a continuous threat exposure management kind of thing that they are doing. Similar kind of continuous threat exposure management, without investing any cost to your product, you can also install by installing any kind of open source product with an extension of your cloud. So if you see, that exposure management is what? It is look beyond the endpoint. It assesses risk landscape, is network analysis on the go, exposure of access, not of endpoint. This is very vital. Exposure of access. Whosoever getting your thing, today I am entering, whenever I am entering in this convention center, initially they check my car. They check my car. Whenever I am entering into the gate, security check, already check done for my body. Then security check also done for my laptop bag. So everywhere they are checking a exposure. If this system is not there in without then, and I am coming with a kind of, you can say, threat. So all the people within this convention center is under attack. So my submission to you, the process which we are adopting, the practices which we are following in our state data center, that is a threat exposure management. I am not particularly from the government side, we will not be able to particularly promote any kind of OEM. I am not talking about the any kind of OEM product. You may adopt the small business organizations, those who are not capable of. It is very useful for the small and medium-sized business organization who are not able to actually bear cost of SIEM and SOC services, SOC and NOC services. They can also adopt this kind of continuous threat exposure management services, which give them a lot of security threat and intelligence input to secure their infrastructure. So this is exposure management. It is about the assets exposure. It is exposure about application and infrastructure. It is the risk prioritization. It is the holistic view about the internal and the external policy. It's a preemptive mitigation. It's a preemptive mitigation. If you know earlier that what is your threat, then you can preempt the threat by informing your SIEM or SOAR that something is coming. Somebody is coming to this room who has some kinds of guns in his pocket or something in his pocket. So kindly analyze. Threat exposure management is not taking any corrective action. Please do not misunderstood that threat exposure management is doing any kind of correcting action. It is giving kind of input to the SIEM or SOAR or to your network management that some packet is coming to your network, something is coming to the system which basically may be with a kind of, that might be false positive. That might be. If you see, recently we have installed a West Bengal state-of-the-art next generation SOC which has operational for last 3 months. We have seen that the threat intelligence is giving by the threat intelligence softwares, but still SIEM and SOAR is not able to tackle this problem. With the passage of time, we have seen that there is a lethargy in the software also. Software is not able to identify sometimes because SIEM and SOAR, the CPU management part of it, busy with some other activities. So they are sometimes missing some kind of vulnerability which is coming from the threat intelligence. Sometimes they are taking it not as a positive, they are taking it as a false positive. So to minimize that kind of risk, these are all of these efforts to reduce or minimize the threat landscape of the system. So exposure management, how? The asset inventory, the application and infrastructure, the attack surface mapping, the port service configuration, BAPT and sandbox for exposure testing, continuous threat exposure management, CTEM, monitoring and adaptation of threat, intelligence mapping, come mitigation. So you might see, I am leaving my slides with the organizer. If you want, you can take it. And if you can improve some kind of system integration in your own security infrastructure, I hope that we got a very interesting result out of this continuous threat exposure management out of this. The ports mostly hacked by the hackers. These are the common example of some ports you are all aware of. So if you install some kind of threat exposure management before your what we call peripheral security, you might get a very good result. So this is my last slide, that continuously getting threat exposure of the APIs, databases, user input forms, and any other potential services in your system, you might be taking it into the consideration. And you might know that some kind of attack surface scenario may be increasing, may not be with respect to some kind of vulnerabilities that is listed, that is old, that is new. You will be surprised that recently we have separated a cloud service within our state SDC with an old cloud and a new cloud provisions. But sometimes we see old cloud vulnerabilities which was outdated for last 3 years. Suddenly it has generated an attack surface and coming to the new cloud which is generating a kind of problem for us. So anybody and everybody in this convention center, those who want to adopt this kind of practice, if you are, I might be, I must sure that you already must be aware of. But from the state government, on behalf of the state government, I want to expose that this kind of exposure management practices we are practicing for last 2.5 years and substantially improved our network security performance and resulting a good kind of public service delivery in the state. Thank you very much.